You, everybody.
Thank you, David. It's always fabulous to hear what you've got planned for us. And I know how much, well, I don't know, I can guess how much work it is the band spends putting it together every week. So thank you to everyone who chose to be part of this spiritual community today. We know you have lots of choices in our virtual world, and we're delighted that you chose to spend this morning with us. In today's talk about affirmations, there's a challenge and a charge or a mission, as the instructions from Mission Impossible, if you choose to accept them. I'll give you the punchline to start with. We all benefit when we manage our thoughts and our words and keep them congruent, that is to say, aligned with the reality that we decide or declare or choose to see and experience. It's easy to say. The real work is consistent remembering, consistent practice, consistent doing. In last week's newsletter, I posted a short piece written by Dr. Christian Sorensen from Seaside CSL in Encinitas, which brilliantly captured the big ideas that we're looking at as we review the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind text and the 4 primary spiritual practices that we teach in CSL. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can read it for yourself, but I will pull a couple ideas from it. Dr. Christian's words: you have been graced with 2 dimensions to consciousness, the spiritual and the mental. The spiritual dimension invites you to commune with the divine, to sip from the nectar of presence, and to know the truth of who you are. I've talked for the last 2 Sundays about the spiritual dimension of consciousness. The first week of the year, I spoke about knowing the divine and knowing truly that it lives in us. The spiritual practice that goes with that is meditation, which is purposefully spending time in the presence of the oneness that lives in, as, and through you and me and everyone else, whether any of us is aware of it or not. Last week, I spoke about accessing our intuitive connection with that divine presence through the practice of visioning. It takes a little more work to do visioning, and yet it can give us new information we didn't have access to before. So back to Dr. Christian's words. The mental dimension allows you to overcome obstacles, create material form, and move toward your dreams. This is the realm of affirmations, visualizations, and knowing that you are the captain of your ship and the master of your fate. It's a powerful state to co-create life according to your choices and desires. You have complete freedom to co-create anything you want. This week, I'm going to talk about the mental practice of using affirmations effectively. Next week, I'm going to be talking about our commitment to ourselves and our own enlightenment or spiritual embodiment, which is a whole lot more than just mental knowing, and to our mutual commitment to each other. And then the last Sunday of the month, I'll pull it all together with our 4th spiritual practice. Back to Dr. Christian. Both dimensions are yours to play in, and you can move freely between them. One is not better than the other. You are a being that operates in both realms simultaneously. His statement contains a promise and a warning. We are already operating in both realms simultaneously. We may not be doing it effectively, but we're always doing it. And it's not something we can turn off and on like a faucet. It's more like our heartbeat, always with us, always active. We may not be conscious of what we're doing at any moment, though. Epictetus, one of the main Greek Stoic philosophers, was born a slave. He was lame and he walked with a crutch. One story is that his leg was broken by one of his owners. We don't know for sure. He might have been born that way, like with a club foot or something. While he was enslaved by a wealthy landowner, he was also allowed and even encouraged to study with one of his Stoic predecessors, Musonius Rufus. After Epictetus was freed, he left town and he started teaching Stoic philosophy. He didn't write anything down. He had a student of his who actually transcribed what he spoke. In his discourses, he said, and the other guy wrote down, "My aim is to bring you to completion, unhindered, free from compulsive behavior, unrestrained, without shame, free, flourishing, and happy. Looking to God in all things, great and small. Your aim is to learn and diligently practice all these things. When then don't you complete the work if you have the right aim, and I both have the right aim and the right preparation? What's missing? The work is quite feasible. It is the only thing in our power. We must only begin." So, what are we to begin? We are to begin to own, experience, and express our own God nature, both the transcendent spiritual part and the mental rubber meets the road part, walking our talk, doing our part, claiming the good that we wish to have. So, how do we do that? In this quote from Holmes, he wrote about treatment, and the same ideas apply to affirmations. It's a Science of Mind, page 47. When one gives a treatment, they are not sitting around hoping something will happen. They are definitely, constructively, actively stating, sensing, and knowing some specific good. A passive meditation will never produce an active demonstration, any more than an artist can paint a picture by sitting down with his paints but never using them. The mind must conceive before the creative energy can produce. We must supply the avenue through which it can work. It already is ready and willing. It is its nature to spring into action, to spring into being through our thought and our action. It's challenging to own our own divine nature sometimes and to be present to the good that we wish to claim. There's so much counter blah blah stuff that happens in the world, and it's distracting, and it pulls us away from our intentional experience of our good. And it's our job to remember to shut off the noise and to realign and be congruent with our desires, not some story that somebody else says is important. In The Art of Life, a book that Keith's group studied back in December last fall, first I want to use a quote from page 41. That's one of my favorites. "Life works by direct affirmation. There is no other way for it to work. This is why we are told to be still and know that all things are possible to God. We are told to affirm, positively to assert, to declare this truth in the face of all apparent opposition, to claim abundance in the midst of poverty, to affirm health in the midst of sickness, to decree joy in the midst of sorrow, and to announce the kingdom of God here and now." That's not a small order if we wish to have a different experience, because it demands that we pay attention to our thoughts and not be lazy and just go along with the common hour thinking. It also means when we slip up, not if, but when, we catch ourselves just as soon as we notice. and make a correction, make an adjustment to the story we tell ourselves, as well as any story we might tell somebody else. Dr. Holmes goes on pages 43 and 44 in The Art of Life. Your thoughts are tools that you use in affirming the creative power of your experience. It may seem strange at first to think we can affirm something into existence where nothing seemed to be. And he puts this next sentence in italics. Affirmation is the greatest and fundamentally the only creative agency in the universe. I'll repeat that. Affirmation is the greatest and fundamentally the only creative agency in the universe. Everything that is, whether we realize it or not, is some affirmation of life. You are the affirmation of this life as individuality, as personality. I was really happy this morning to hear Shelley use affirmations as part of the meditation, the pre-service meditation. It was perfect. Back to Holmes' Art of Life. An affirmation is not an affirmation unless it is inwardly believed in. Hence, your intellect, your will, and your feeling must agree with your affirmations if they're going to have real power. This is why it's work, because we can know it in our head, but until we move it down into our heart and into our persona, we move it into our intellect, our will, our feeling, our embodiment, it can't have power. We have to own it for it to manifest for us. I'm going to remind you of a story, an old story that you've almost certainly heard before. The story goes, an old Cherokee grandfather is telling his grandson a story. A fight is going on inside me. It's a terrible fight between two wolves. One is full of anger, envy, greed, arrogance, resentment, and lies. He continued. The other is full of joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The wolves are fighting to the death. Wide-eyed, the boy asked his grandfather which wolf would win. The old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. I love that story. It's just so right. So I was really bummed when I learned that it was a complete fabrication. Billy Graham made it up because he thought it proved a point he wanted to make. It's not a story that originates in the native peoples. It's not even anywhere near anything they would say. But the content is shockingly familiar and shockingly meaningful because we know we have within us all possibilities. And we know that the possibilities we focus on and enact are the ones that show up for us and as us in our lives, and also in the people we interact with. We get to decide. Actually, we have to decide if we wish to have a certain experience. We have to decide where we put our focus and our intention. And we have to not contradict that desire with our next thought or feeling or the words that come out of our mouths. It's a lot of work, and it's good work. It's worthy work. So I want to talk a minute about the inauguration that happens on Wednesday. I want you to pay attention to how you are holding this event in your mind. If you are in any way worried or anxious or fearful, you are throwing negative affirmations at a very important event. If you are angry, feeling vindictive or victimized, you are adding negativity to something that doesn't need that kind of input. Each one of us is responsible for the energy, for the vibrations, for the thought forms we put into the world. And each of us is always at choice on how we engage, whether we know it or not, or want to know it or not. Sorry, that's just how the law works. There is some good support available for Inauguration Day. Our friends at New Vision CSL in Phoenix realized that hosting an affirmative prayer, vigil, and meditation on Inauguration Day on Zoom would be a really good idea. So they sent an email out to all the people that supported their prayer meditation on Election Day in hopes that they would get people available who could help them both run the Zoom room and also speak. This day is going to be a challenge for a lot of people to embody and express peace, joy, harmony, and love. We get to affirm this. We get to affirm the qualities we wish to see in the world. We will be supporting New Vision on that day, and I invite you to join with them if you need a little boost. I've already posted the link on our Facebook page, and I will put it in the newsletter that comes out Wednesday morning at 3 a.m. So you'll have the link on Wednesday if you open the newsletter, and it's going to be good, and it's going to be uplifting and supporting and affirming the good, the peace that we wish to have the experience of on that day. So I want to close with some words from two people. One from marketing expert Seth Godin. Is mood a gift or a skill? He wrote, some days we wake up with optimism and possibility. We're able to find more reserves, connect better, and do more generous work. It might be because the outside world has handed us good news and opportunities, or it might be because the chemicals in our brain are particularly aligned. I think it's fair to assert that sometimes our moods feel like they're handed to us. It's also clearly true we can do things to improve our mood. Morning pages, meditation, exercise, positive thinking, the right audio inputs, who we hang out with, the media we consume. It's all a choice. And if it's a choice, that means it's a skill because we can get better at it. And I want to close, since tomorrow is MLK Day, some words from him, from his talk, Loving Your Enemies, from his book, Strength to Love. You will recognize these words too. Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already void of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Hate multiplies hate. Violence multiplies violence. And toughness multiplies toughness in a descending spiral of destruction. So when Jesus said, love your enemies, he set forth a profound and ultimately inescapable admonition. We must love our enemies or else. So I invite you to consider that thought. What does loving your enemies mean? What does managing your mental model mean? What does owning your experience mean? And when we fall off, getting back up and doing it again. Do that. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So I want to move into the prayer straight away because I want to remember that divine place, that spiritual presence that lives within, around, and through each and all. and how we feel that presence, and then how we emanate that in our world. So grab some affirmation that you wish to have a bit more full experience of while I speak the words. I sit in the sweet spot, knowing I live enfolded, surrounded, embraced, and encompassed by that divine and holy presence. That one light, that one love, that one power, that one joy that causes the planets to spin, that beats the hearts and moves the air in the lungs of each beloved on this call, and each one who watches this at a later time. Each one lives in and as that whole and holy presence. And as each one remembers that, as each one practices that, as each one presents that goodness to the world, goodness is expanded, not because of any chore, push, or shove, or striving, but simply by doing, by being that light that we each and all are, and by showing that light to the world. We shine into those dark places and we illuminate them. And as more goodness is seen, more goodness is experienced. And so I know right here and right now in this whole and holy place that each is already that beacon of goodness, and each already has that creative potential to shine more brightly. So I feel so grateful to have this awareness, to know this light, to see it, to be able to call it out and make it brighter, and that each and all feel uplifted by this practice and this doing and this experience. Blessing this day, blessing all participants, knowing the eminent goodness, the lightness and love of the divine as each one. I bless this day and all of us, and I let it be, and so it is.
And so